guys, it's Miss Strasser here to talk about writing for today. I encourage you to not really have anything in front of you right now. You will be given lots of opportunity for the working portion, but I just ask that you kind of follow along here as we would if we were in the room having a writing mini lesson. So when we think about evidence, at least in my class situation, most of my students are collecting evidence, which I'm hoping that's where the rest of you are as well. So when we think about collecting evidence from a literary essay, the great part is we only have one place to look for evidence. Okay, there's lots of choice, there's lots of opportunity because it's all coming from the same place. So we don't have to spend a ton of time on the research. There's only one opportunity for evidence collection, and that's the story itself. So we're going to revisit Fly Away Home. We've got Andrew and his father, and we are pretending that we've written a literary essay about freedom being the theme. Okay, we've done this a lot. So one of the reasons that we have come up with is Andrew and his father making money. Okay, we're going to use that reason to prove the theme of freedom. But now I need some evidence. Firstly, you need to decide in your story what evidence is actually going to be helpful. So when I look at these two examples of evidence here, I have on the weekends, Dad takes the bus to work. He's a janitor in the office in the city. The bus fare is $1 each way. That's a direct quote from the story Fly Away Home. I also have, he and I collected rented luggage carts that people have left outside and return them for 50 cents each. If the crowds are big and safe, we offer to carry bags. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, both of these involve Andrew and his father, and they both have something to do with money. So how do we pick? Well, when I think about Andrew and his father making money, the word that stands out to me the most is making. When I think about this first quote, we do see that it talks about Dad going to work, which is good. But the only mention of money in this quote is what the dad pays to get there. So if it costs $1 each way on the bus, that means that his father is paying $1 each way to get to work. Now, he probably makes money at his job, the janitor, but in this direct quote specifically, we need real proof, and we can't have an imagination here when we're collecting evidence. So in my opinion, the second quote here actually shows the son, Andrew, and his friend making money. They're actually earning 50 cents by doing this job. So when I think about collecting evidence, first of all, you need to make sure that your quotes actually truly support the reason, and not just maybe kind of mention it, or it leaves the reader guessing. We don't want to leave the reader guessing. Now, when it's time to put that on paper, your evidence collection should look like this. A lot of people that I know have already started this process, which is great, but I'm going to make sure that each one of those evidence portions looks correct. So when we think about the evidence, I want you to set aside the explaining part for right now, okay? So if you are doing the evidence, that's great. I really need you to not worry about explaining just yet. We can dive into that tomorrow when we come back. But when we look at the evidence, it says first evidence with page number. This is extremely crucial, and it's not an option. So when you take down your evidence, you need to make sure that you include the page number that the quote is found in and the story. So let's just say, for instance, this quote is found on page 4. I don't know. We'll just say page 4. When we think about how to introduce a quote, a lot of people, at least my students specifically, talk about, well, in the text it says. That's very true, and it is it's a great way of saying, in the story it says this. But I am trying to get my class, and now that I'm talking to all three, we need to introduce direct quotes in different ways. So we have an author now. Eve Bunting writes in her story. Okay, we can introduce the text that way. We could say the author writes, or the author says. Something different when we are kind of introducing a direct quote. Gives us kind of a different way of approaching those things, so we're not kind of saying the exact same thing every time. because it does get really, really repetitive. On page 4, Eve Bunting states, again, finding new ways to say that. So I'm going to practice showing this quote written on the lines correctly, and how it would look in our organizer here. So if I have my lines, I might write on page 4, comma, Eve Bunting, obviously you're not going to type this, you're going to write, so ignore how this is looking at the moment. Eve Bunting writes, if I could spell, that would be awesome. And then another comma, okay? So after you introduce the page number, there's a comma, and then after you say in the text it says, or in the story it states, there's another comma. And then you get those quotation marks going, and you can start the direct quote. So I am going to put down word for word here what the the story says. Again, fly away home. You could say that too. You could say the story Fly Away Home states that people have left outside and return them for 50 cents each. Again, I won't go all the way into detail for that one, but then at the end of that quote, you need another set of direct quotes, and this would be how it would look written on the lines completely, with the commas in the right spot, an introduction of the quote, and then quotation marks with a period on the inside of the quote. That is 3 times per reason, 3 reasons, 9 times. So when your teacher goes and looks through this, when we return, when you're taking down evidence, this is the process. This is the best outcome for what those evidence should look like. The explanation portion we can get into tomorrow, but to kind of introduce the explanation, here are some ways to show that you're going to say something about explaining besides just this quote shows, because, man, I get really annoyed reading that. This connects to. The important thing about this is giving an idea about, to add on to this quote or to add additional thinking, something that is different than this quote shows. I think that's a great way to start, but we need to learn how to kind of differ that. So that is kind of what you're going to be doing for writing. Again, I think if you don't have your 3 reasons, that's definitely going to be something you want to do. But as you start to collect evidence, I want you to start putting those on the lines in your organizer for each body paragraph and continue to come back to this because it needs to look like this. Okay? Good luck. Work hard.